The screen glows in the dark, a single rectangle of light carving through a room heavy with stillness. The faint hum of the computer fan fills the air like a heartbeat, mechanical and steady. A cursor blinks, patient, expectant, waiting for a command that should never be typed. Outside, the city sleeps beneath a sheet of cold rain, the sound muffled behind dusty windows. The narrator's voice enters quietly, almost a whisper, the tone of someone confessing something they wish they could forget. The internet, you know, the voice says, isn't the real one. What you use every day. The apps, the feeds, the searches, is only the surface. A soft, metallic sound echoes from somewhere in the house. The narrator pauses. Beneath that surface, they continue, is a place where rules fall apart, where people vanish, and where curiosity turns into currency. The camera drifts closer to the computer screen, code reflected in the pale eyes of a faceless figure. The lighting flickers, colors shifting between deep blues and muted grays, as if the room itself is breathing. Every keystroke sounds amplified, echoing through the empty space. Somewhere far away, a dog barks once and falls silent. The atmosphere feels claustrophobic, the kind of quiet that makes your ears strain to catch the faintest noise. You can almost smell the static in the air, the ozone tang of electricity, the faint burn of a machine that's been on for too long. The narrator's tone sharpens slightly, curiosity laced with dread. They explain that the deep web isn't inherently evil. It's where government data, private databases, and encrypted servers live, hidden from search engines. But beneath that lies something darker, the dark web, a realm intentionally obscured, where digital ghosts roam and human boundaries dissolve. It's not just illegal markets or hacking hubs, it's stories. Stories whispered in chat rooms, buried in abandoned forums, recorded in glitchy videos that appear once and vanish before morning. Every click takes you deeper. Every link promises a secret you can't unsee. The visuals grow more abstract, screens overlapping, symbols bleeding into one another. The rhythm of the scene slows, mirroring the descent into unseen layers of the digital abyss. The narrator describes how thousands of users every day go looking, out of boredom, out of curiosity, out of some quiet ache for connection, and how some never come back the same. It starts with curiosity, they murmur, but it always ends with a question you can't stop asking. Who's really watching who? A faint sound cuts through, the static hum of an old dial-up tone. The screen blurs. Shadows move in the reflection, though no one's behind the viewer. The camera lingers on the reflection in the monitor, a human shape that doesn't quite move in sync. The pacing slows to a heartbeat, each beat a click, each click a warning. The narrator lowers their voice. What you're about to hear are 8 true stories. Stories buried deep in the archives of the web. Each one was found by someone who thought they could handle it. The tension thickens, like the air before a storm. The faint glow of the monitor casts long, distorted shadows across the wall. The narrator breathes out softly, their voice carrying the weight of both fascination and fear. But once you open certain doors online, they whisper, you can't close them again. Sometimes, the door starts opening itself. For a few seconds, there's silence. Only the faint hum of the fan remains. Then, a faint digital crackle, like interference. The camera zooms closer to the cursor on the screen. It begins to move on its own. Letters appear, one by one, slow and deliberate. Do you want to see? The question hangs there, trembling with invisible electricity. The cursor blinks once, twice. Then, with a sudden flash of static, everything cuts to black. The narrator exhales shakily, a faint tremor in their tone as they murmur. Our first story begins in a chat room that should never have existed. It started on one of those nights when sleep felt like an impossible idea, when the world outside was silent, but his thoughts wouldn't stop. Evan sat at his desk, the glow of the computer screen painting his tired eyes a dull blue. The time in the corner read 3:17 a.m. His apartment was a small one-bedroom on the edge of the city, cluttered with empty mugs, half-read books, and the hum of electronics that never seemed to stop. He wasn't looking for anything in particular that night, just something to distract him. That's how he found the chat room. It was tucked inside a forgotten forum, buried under endless layers of threads and links. For those awake at 3 a.m., the name felt oddly comforting. He clicked it without thinking. The page loaded slowly, like something resisting being seen. Then the chat window opened. Dozens of usernames scrolled by, typing mundane things. Sleeplessness, coffee brands, random existential jokes. For a moment, it felt harmless. Evan typed, "Hey, anyone else just can't sleep?" The reply came instantly, almost too fast. "Welcome, Evan." He froze. He hadn't used his real name. His username was something random, Sleepless Shadow, a name he'd never used anywhere else. He stared at the reply, his mind flicking through logical explanations. Maybe he'd mentioned his name somewhere earlier? Maybe it was a glitch? Before he could think further, another message appeared. "It's okay. We're all awake here." A flicker crossed the screen. The room's lighting dimmed slightly, as if reacting to the words. Evan tried to shrug it off and typed back, "Do I know you?" The response came, "You will." Then another user joined the chat, their username nothing but static symbols. The messages began appearing too fast to read, lines of code mixing with sentences. Words half-formed like corrupted data. "Look behind you. We see you. Stay still." Evan's heart started to race. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. The only light came from his monitor, which now flickered irregularly, almost pulsing. He minimized the window, but another pop-up appeared on his desktop, blank except for a single blinking cursor. Words began typing themselves. "Don't try to leave." He yanked the Ethernet cable from the wall. The screen stayed on. He turned off the Wi-Fi. The messages kept coming. His reflection on the monitor trembled. He realized his webcam's tiny green light was on. He reached to cover it, but before he could, the chat window reopened itself. The username admin appeared. Then a message, "You shouldn't have done that." A sharp ringing filled his ears, the kind of static that sounds like whispering when you listen too closely. Evan whispered to himself, "This is a prank, just some hacker." But deep down, he knew better. The chat began flooding again, words appearing one on top of another until the entire screen was filled with his name repeated over and over. His vision blurred. The lights flickered. For a moment, the power in the apartment seemed to die. Everything went dark except for the monitor. The image on screen had changed. It wasn't the chat anymore. It was a live video feed. His own living room, from the corner, grainy and green-tinted like night vision. He could see himself sitting at the desk from a different angle. His breath caught in his throat. Someone, or something, was filming him from inside his apartment. He turned slowly, heart pounding so hard he could hear it. Nothing. The shadows were still. But when he looked back at the screen, he wasn't sitting at the desk in the feed anymore. The chair was empty. The camera began to tilt slowly, panning toward the doorway behind him. The sound of typing returned, soft, deliberate. He looked back at the monitor. The chat window had reopened. One final message appeared, letter by letter, painfully slow. "Look behind you." Evan froze. Every instinct screamed not to move. The room was dead silent, the kind of silence that has weight. He wanted to believe it was fake. Just code, pixels, a trick. But something warm brushed the back of his neck, like breath. He spun around, the chair screeching across the floor. Nothing. No one. Just darkness. The webcam light turned off. The monitor went black. For a moment, relief washed over him. Maybe it was over. Maybe it was a dream. Then, in the darkness, the faint blue glow returned, not from the monitor, but from the reflection on the window. He leaned closer, confused. The reflection moved. His reflection smiled, though he wasn't. He stumbled backward, knocking over a cup, his breath ragged. The reflection on the glass still stared back at him, but now it was typing. The window flickered like a screen, faint letters forming in reverse. "We told you not to look." The sound of 1,000 whispers filled the room, layered and distorted, rising into a static hiss. He clutched his head, squeezing his eyes shut, trying to drown them out. When he opened them again, the apartment lights were on. Morning light spilled through the blinds. His computer sat idle, silent, just a desktop background. Normal, untouched. No chat room, No messages, no webcam light. Evan sat frozen for a long time, unsure if any of it had happened. He checked his browser history. Nothing. No record of the site. No saved cache. No trace of the name, for those awake at 3 a.m. The only thing out of place was a small text file on his desktop he didn't remember creating. He double-clicked it. Inside was one line, "Good morning, Evan. Sleep well?" He shut off his computer. For days afterward, he avoided technology entirely, but sometimes late at night when he walked past his desk, he swore he heard the faint clicking of keys typing by themselves. Sometimes, when he tried to sleep, a notification sound would echo from the darkness, soft, familiar, waiting for him to answer. The rain outside hadn't stopped. It pressed softly against the glass, rhythmic, hypnotic, the kind of sound that fills the silence when words can't. The glow from a monitor fades in and out like a heartbeat, and the narrator's voice returns, calm but heavy, as though they've just seen something they can't unsee. There's a reason, they say softly, why people wander into the deep web. It's not always about crime, or curiosity, or even thrill. Sometimes it's loneliness. Sometimes it's the need to feel something real, even if it's dangerous. The visuals are slow and cinematic, servers stretching endlessly in a warehouse, humming like distant machinery, wires hanging from the ceiling like veins, droplets of condensation sliding down metal surfaces. Every sound echoes faintly, like the building itself is alive. Between the mechanical hums, there's a ghost of human sound, breathing, whispering, something you're not supposed to hear. The tone of the narration shifts, more reflective than before, more human. In the surface world, people post smiles, filters, and fragments of lives that never really existed. But down there in the dark, they tell the truth. They confess. They scream. They bleed. Images of anonymous chat logs appear across the screen, blurred, scrolling too fast to read. A line lingers for a second longer than the others. Is anyone awake? Please talk to me. The narrator pauses on it. Maybe that's what draws them in. They continue. The idea that someone, anyone, might be listening. The camera cuts to a dimly lit apartment, showing multiple screens glowing in the dark. Dozens of faceless users stare back into their devices, each one alone but connected by invisible threads. The tension here isn't sharp or sudden. It's slow, almost mournful. The story breathes, giving the listener space to feel the weight of digital isolation. The visuals are saturated with cold colors. Gray, blue, a faint green glow from indicators that blink like artificial stars. The narrator's tone softens further, almost a whisper. The deep web isn't haunted because of what's on it. It's haunted because of who goes there. People searching for meaning in a void. People trying to find proof that they exist. A brief silence follows, letting the words linger. The sound of static fades in, quiet at first, like distant wind. Then, a shift. The narrator exhales, the voice lowering slightly. But there's another reason people stay down there. Once you've seen too much, once you've found something that shouldn't exist, you start to feel watched. The web starts watching back. The sound design grows subtle yet unnerving. In the distance, faint typing, like someone responding to a conversation the listener can't see. The perspective feels slightly off, as though the audience themselves have drifted onto the wrong side of the screen. The imagery deepens, silhouettes moving behind glass, reflections flickering, shadows merging with cables. The narrator speaks slower now, letting dread build through stillness. Every horror you've ever read online started with someone alone in front of a screen. Every story began with one decision: to click something they shouldn't have. The camera pans across faces illuminated by light from their monitors. Eyes hollow, fixed, entranced. Emotionally, the section carries a heavy ache. Less of fear, more of quiet dread mixed with empathy. It's about human weakness, about the need to feel connected in a world that feels colder every day. The narrator's tone trembles slightly as they say, "There are millions of us staring into glowing rectangles every night, hoping to feel less alone. But what if something stares back? What if, on the other side of the signal, something human isn't?" The background sound grows subtle but distorted, a low hum shifting in pitch, turning into faint breathing. The screen glitches for a fraction of a second, flashing an unrecognizable image, too fast to process. Then stillness again. The narrator lowers their voice almost to a whisper. Some corners of the web aren't just haunted, they're hungry. The camera cuts to black for a long, unsettling pause. Then a single light flickers back on, a monitor displaying an empty chat window. A message appears by itself. Are you still awake? The text sits there, pulsing faintly. The typing indicator begins to blink, even though no one's there. The hum returns, soft and unrelenting. The narrator takes a slow breath, almost shaking. What you're about to hear next, they murmur, is not about loneliness anymore. It's about the things that wait for us when we go too deep. The camera zooms closer to the blinking cursor until it fills the screen. The cursor freezes, then types a single word by itself, play. The soft click of a mouse echoes in the dark, and the faint sound of a stream loading fills the silence. An audio distortion that grows clearer, clearer, until the faint sound of someone crying emerges under the static. The voice of the narrator fades almost imperceptibly, swallowed by the noise. Some people search for the truth, others accidentally find it. The sound of a soft electronic chime signals the next story's beginning, pulling the viewer forward before they even realize they're moving. Maya had always been curious, the kind of person who wanted to know what others avoided. It wasn't recklessness, it was fascination. She was a second-year computer science student, obsessed with the hidden layers of the internet. While her friends were streaming shows or scrolling through social media, Maya spent her nights exploring digital archives, encrypted forums, and obscure communities buried beneath the visible web. It started as a research project, an essay on anonymity and cyberethics, but somewhere along the way, it became something else, something darker. That night, the air was heavy, the hum of her dorm's fluorescent lights buzzing just slightly off pitch. Outside, the campus was silent, except for the occasional car slicing through the rain. Her laptop screen glowed faintly against her face, highlighting the exhaustion in her eyes. She scrolled through a thread labeled True Streams, the hidden rooms. Most of the links were dead, but one stood out short, direct, pulsing faintly like it was alive. The description beneath it read, Live show, real pain, real time. Maya hesitated. The comments beneath the link were strange, half of them deleted. The remaining ones vague warnings. Don't watch alone. If you see the clock, it's already too late. Her pulse quickened, a strange mix of fear and intrigue tightening in her chest. She clicked the link. The screen went black for a moment, then loaded a simple video player with no title, no controls, just a static bar at the bottom, frozen at 0. Then the feed began. The image was dark and grainy, lit only by a single red bulb that swung slightly, revealing what looked like a concrete room. The walls were bare except for dark smears that could have been rust, or something worse. A figure stood in the middle of the frame, motionless, wearing a mask that looked handmade, stitched from leather or skin. In the corner, a digital clock ticked, 3 a.m. Maya frowned, her fingers tightening around the edge of her laptop. The chat beside the stream was alive, hundreds of messages flooding in, scrolling faster than she could read. Some were laughing, others typing commands. A few were bidding with strings of cryptocurrency symbols. She typed a message out of impulse. Is this real? No one replied. The masked figure moved. Slowly, their head turned, mechanical, deliberate, and faced directly toward the camera. Maya's stomach dropped. The movement felt wrong, too slow, like a recording being played at the wrong speed. The clock in the corner flickered. 3:01. 3:02. But the seconds didn't move evenly. They jumped forward, then back. The feed glitched, and for a split second, Maya saw something else. Something reflected in the shiny surface of the camera lens. A shape, faint and distorted, like a second face behind the camera. Then it was gone. The masked figure raised their hand, holding something small, metallic, dripping. The chat went wild. Words blurred together. Do it. More. Payment sent. Her heart thudded painfully. She reached for the keyboard, trying to close the window, but the cursor wouldn't move. The mouse froze. She pressed Escape, Alt plus F4, Control plus Alt plus Delete. Nothing worked. The clock on her wall ticked, matching the sound in the video. And then the camera shifted slightly, tilting down just enough for her to see a second person in the corner. Bound, trembling, a muffled voice leaking through the static. Maya whispered, "This isn't real." But the words didn't feel true. Suddenly, the red light flickered. The figure on screen froze mid-motion. The chat went silent. All messages stopped instantly. The stillness was suffocating. Then, without warning, the masked figure looked directly into the camera again. The feed zoomed in slowly, impossibly, until the lens filled the screen. The image distorted, color bleeding into digital snow. For half a second, she thought it had ended. But then her own reflection appeared on the dark glass of her laptop screen. The masked figure was gone. The room was empty now, except for a single flickering light bulb swinging from the ceiling. But the feed didn't end. It simply shifted perspectives. The camera now showed a room identical to hers. Same desk, same window, same blinking router light. Her heart stopped. She leaned forward, breath shaking. "No," she whispered. The video camera panned slowly, stopping at the bed behind her. The bedsheet on screen was empty for a second, then moved. The sound of the movement didn't come from her speakers. It came from behind her. Maya spun around. Nothing. The door was closed. The air was too still. Her chest tightened. She turned back to the screen, but now the camera showed her face, her real face, staring back at her in real time. She wasn't recording. Her webcam was off. Or so she thought. On the video feed, her image started lagging behind by half a second. A delayed version of herself blinking slower, smiling faintly. She reached up to cover the webcam, but before she could, the feed froze. The image of her smiling face remained, eyes locked onto the lens. Then, over the frozen image, words began to appear. "Thank you for watching." Her screen flickered once, twice, then went completely black. For several seconds, there was nothing, just the reflection of her terrified face in the dark. Then a faint tapping began, from the wall behind her desk. Slow, deliberate. She pressed her ear against the wall, listening. It was coming from the other side. 3 knocks, then silence. 3 more. Her roommate wasn't home. No one was supposed to be in the adjacent room. The tapping stopped. A long, awful quiet followed, and then her laptop turned on by itself. The screen displayed the live stream again. Same red-lit room, same clock. But this time, there was a new figure in the center of the frame. A girl, tied to a chair. A girl with dark hair, wearing a gray hoodie, just like hers. Maya's voice broke into a whisper. "That's not me." The feed glitched one last time. The chat exploded with messages. "She's perfect. Do it." Then, the video cut out, replaced by a black screen and a single line of text. Stream concluded. Payment received. Her laptop shut down completely. The hum of the fan stopped. Silence swallowed the room. The next morning, her door was sealed off with police tape. Her roommate returned to find her desk overturned, her computer missing. On the wall above her bed, written faintly in red marker, were 4 words: "The stream never ends." The night felt heavier after that story. The sound of rain had stopped, leaving behind a silence that seemed too perfect, too deliberate. The screen fades to black, the echo of the last scream from the live stream still hanging faintly in the air. The narrator's voice returns, low and slow, as if speaking from far away, or perhaps from inside your own mind. When you watch something you shouldn't, they begin. You don't just walk away from it. Part of it walks away with you. A faint hum underlines the narration. A soft, rhythmic tone like the sound of electricity running through a wire. The visual opens with servers glowing faintly in the dark, rows upon rows stretching endlessly, their indicator lights blinking like eyes in a dreamless machine. The air feels damp and metallic. A camera moves slowly through the endless aisles, tracing the whisper of cooling fans. The voice continues. "We like to think that what happens online stays there, trapped behind the screen. But it doesn't. It lingers, in memory, in guilt, in nightmares. The pacing is slow now, almost meditative, like the story itself is catching its breath after the chaos. This section is quiet, but not peaceful. It's the kind of quiet that feels like something is listening. The narrator's tone turns introspective. Every person who's ever seen something horrific through a screen, something real, knows this feeling. The guilt doesn't fade. You tell yourself it was just pixels, just data. But the body doesn't believe that. Your heart races, your hands sweat, your dreams start to copy what you saw. A montage fades across the screen, faces illuminated by blue light, eyes tired and hollow. Strangers across the world, each alone in their rooms, replaying something in their heads they can't delete. A man in Tokyo sits staring at a frozen video frame. A woman in Berlin smokes quietly beside her monitor, watching the glow fade as dawn approaches. A boy in New York deletes his browser history, but his reflection stays on the black screen a few seconds too long. The narration softens. There's something about seeing pain that changes you. The deep web feeds on that, on the watchers, because for every act of horror, there are thousands of eyes willing to witness it. They say evil spreads through those who choose to look away, but online, it spreads through those who can't stop looking. The visuals start to distort slightly, glitches appearing across the image, like corrupted memory files. The hum beneath the voice becomes faint whispers, overlapping like echoes of forgotten confessions. The narrator breathes out softly, voice trembling just a little. Some users, they say, couldn't take it. They stopped sleeping, started hearing things. Whispers through their speakers when the computer was off. Flickers of video files reappearing on their hard drives after being deleted. Some claimed the content wasn't stored on their devices. It was stored in them. The perspective shifts. The camera pans toward a dark room with only one lit screen. A man sits in front of it, unmoving, eyes wide, reflecting white light. On the screen, the same chat room from earlier appears. But now, it's empty except for a single line of text. Do you remember what you saw? The man doesn't answer. The cursor blinks, waiting. Then, without warning, the text deletes itself, letter by letter, until the screen is blank again. The narrator's tone lowers, almost mournful. There's a word for it, digital haunting. The belief that once you witness something terrible online, your machine becomes a vessel for it, a carrier, and every time you turn it on, you feed it. The lights in the server room begin to dim, one by one, until only a few red glows remain. The hum drops into a low, throbbing pulse. The pacing holds steady, slow, steady, hypnotic, inviting the audience into a state of uneasy calm. The atmosphere feels suspended, fragile, like a single wrong sound could shatter it. The narrator continues, "We used to think ghosts haunted places. Now, they haunt data. They travel through cables, through code, through screens. They live in compression artifacts, in corrupted pixels. They live in memory, not just computer memory, but human memory too." A faint image flickers across the black screen. A shadow standing behind someone who's watching a video. It's only visible for a second, almost too subtle to notice. The narrator hesitates, as though catching their breath. Guilt is a living thing, they whisper. It grows, it evolves, and the deeper you go online, the more it watches back. The camera slowly zooms in on a single monitor in the center of the dark. A chat window opens on its own. The typing indicator blinks, slow and deliberate. No one is there to type. The words appear, one by one. Would you like to see another? The hum deepens. The light of the screen begins to flicker, casting faint shadows on the walls that move just a little too slowly. The narrator's voice shifts, no longer calm, but cautious. Every story from the deep web starts with curiosity. Every one of them ends the same way, with someone seeing too much. The chat window disappears. The screen goes black again. For a moment, only the hum of the servers remains. Then the whispering starts, barely audible, a chorus of soft voices saying something you can't quite understand. The voices fade into static, merging into the sound of wind. The narrator exhales, the tone rising slightly in intensity, signaling the build toward the next horror. Some say the web itself remembers, that every deleted file, every erased video, still exists somewhere in the dark, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to find it. The final image before the section ends is a hand reaching toward the screen. The fingertips touch the glass. The monitor lights up faintly beneath them, as though responding to touch. Then the image fades completely. The last sound is a whisper, so soft it's almost part of the static. Let me tell you about the next one. The screen opens to the flicker of a single security camera feed. The image is grainy, distorted, tinted green from the night vision lens. A dimly lit corridor stretches ahead. Concrete walls, metal doors, flickering fluorescent lights. The soft hum of the camera fills the silence. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, a shadow moves at the far end of the hall, slow, deliberate, like someone who knows they shouldn't be seen but doesn't care if they are. The narrator's voice slides in, measured and calm, a whisper coated with dread. Some videos were never meant to be watched. Some exist for reasons no one will ever understand. The story begins with a young man named Lewis, a digital archivist and part-time hacker who specialized in recovering deleted or lost data. He wasn't a bad person. He just liked understanding things that others didn't. One night, while exploring an abandoned university server rumored to store classified projects from the early days of AI research, he stumbled upon a folder labeled simply Hades. It was buried deep, protected by layers of encryption. Curiosity got the better of him. He cracked it open. Inside, there was only one file, a looping security feed timestamped from 2007. The pacing picks up slightly here, the hum of tension returning like a low pulse. The video feed played automatically, full screen. It showed what looked like an underground testing facility. Dozens of empty lab rooms. Dust. Silence. And then, as the minutes passed, something subtle began to change. The shadows on the floor weren't consistent. They seemed to move even when nothing in the room did. Lewis rewound the footage, then slowed it down. His eyes narrowed. The shadows were forming patterns, almost like human figures moving through the hallways, but only visible when the video was played at half speed. The narrator's voice lowers, intimate and uneasy. The footage shouldn't have been live. It was a recording. But as Lewis kept watching, the lights in his apartment began to flicker, matching the rhythm of the fluorescent bulbs in the video. His hands trembled as he reached for the keyboard. Static crackled in his speakers, though the file was muted. Then, something impossible happened. The timestamp on the video changed. It updated to the current date and time. The feed was now live. Visually, this moment unfolds like a cinematic crescendo. The glow of Lewis's monitor reflects off his face, his pupils dilated in terror. Behind him, the faint outline of a corridor appears on his screen, identical to the one in the video feed. The air in his apartment feels thicker, heavier. The faint buzz of electronics turns into a deep, throbbing vibration. He leaned closer. The narrator continues softly, and saw a new figure standing at the end of the corridor, something humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs were long, its head tilted in a way that made no sense. And though it was far away, Lewis could see it breathing. He froze. The figure in the feed tilted its head back toward the camera, as if it could see him. For a brief second, the video flickered, and when the image returned, the figure was closer. Then closer again. Lewis slammed the laptop shut, his heart pounding. Silence. But the faint hum continued, coming not from his computer this time, but from the walls, from the electricity itself. The pacing slows down again, but the fear lingers. The narrator describes Lewis's descent into paranoia over the next few days. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that corridor, the flickering lights, the thing moving closer. He destroyed the laptop, burned the hard drive, cut the power to his apartment. But still, at night, he could hear it. A faint static hum echoing from his unplugged monitor. A cinematic montage plays, Lewis pacing his apartment, curtains drawn, muttering to himself. He tries to convince himself it was just a hallucination. He hasn't eaten in days. His voice shakes as he records an audio log. If anyone finds this, don't open the file. Don't look for it. Don't let it know you're watching. His hands tremble as he clicks stop. Then, a knock at the door. 3 slow taps. He freezes. The camera angle widens. Lewis staring at the door, breathing hard. Another knock. Louder this time. He whispers, "Who's there?" But there's no response. He edges closer, and just as he reaches for the handle, the lights go out. Total darkness. Only the faint glow of his destroyed laptop remains. A dead machine somehow lit from within. The screen turns on by itself, showing the corridor again. The figure is standing inches away from the camera now. Its face, or what passes for one, is distorted static like corrupted data trying to form human features. Lewis backs away, tripping over a chair. The narrator's tone rises slightly, rhythmic and tense. He screamed, but there was no sound. The video feed had gone silent. The only noise was his own heartbeat, thick and heavy in his chest. He crawls toward the window, pulling himself up, desperate for any sign of life outside. But when he looks out, his reflection stares back at him. No city lights, no buildings, just the corridor, stretching endlessly behind his own reflection. The pacing breaks here, silence again, long enough for the audience to breathe, to feel the weight of dread settle in. The narrator's voice drops to a whisper. The next morning, his apartment was empty, his door locked from the inside, his equipment gone. The only thing left was a single external drive plugged into the wall. Cut to a close-up shot of the drive being discovered by investigators. They plug it into a system, and the file opens automatically. The same feed appears, still running, timestamped to the current time. The corridor looks identical, except now, there's a new figure visible at the end. It's not the creature this time. It's Lewis, staring straight at the camera, his mouth moving silently, his eyes empty. The sound fades to static, then to a whisper that seems to echo from the screen itself. "You're watching now." The narrator allows a moment of silence, the quiet stretching long enough to make the audience's pulse quicken again. Then softly, "There are videos online that no one should ever open, because once you do, they start watching back." The final image lingers, a slow zoom into the static of the feed, until the screen fills entirely with noise. Hidden between the patterns of white and black, for just a fraction of a second, a single frame appears. The words, "Hades active." Then, darkness. The story begins again in the calm after the storm, as the narrator's voice emerges from the static like a whisper breaking through the dark. The tone is subdued now, reflective, but underneath it hums a deep unease, as if something unseen is still crawling beneath the surface. After Lewis vanished, the voice begins. The digital world didn't rest. The feed didn't stop, and for those who kept searching for it, something new began to appear. A story whispered in fragments across forums, voice notes, and late-night message boards. They called it the Sleep Experiment Revisited. The cinematic tone shifts here, cool blue lighting, an empty medical facility, dust particles drifting in shafts of pale light from cracked windows. The pacing is slow, deliberate, like the story itself is walking carefully through forbidden ground. A single overhead light buzzes faintly, illuminating a gurney, straps dangling. The narrator continues, "The original sleep experiment is an old horror legend, but what if it wasn't fiction? What if someone tried to recreate it? Not in a lab this time, but online." A young woman named Mara becomes the focus of this chapter. She's a neuroscience grad student researching the effects of long-term insomnia on cognitive decay. Intelligent, but emotionally fractured, she hasn't slept properly in years. Her dark circles seem tattooed into her skin. She begins browsing obscure psychology archives when she finds a data dump containing video files labeled Condition, Extended Wakefulness. Each video features anonymous volunteers forced to remain awake for days on end, hooked to biometric machines. The voices in the background are cold, clinical, and automated, no human presence, only commands from synthesized speech programs. The atmosphere builds, faint static layered under the narrator's voice, rhythmic beeping of heart monitors. The visuals grow dimmer, colors desaturated. The narrator explains, "Mara's curiosity was academic at first. She wanted to understand what prolonged wakefulness does to the human mind. But as she watched the footage, she noticed something strange. Each subject, after about the 120-hour mark, began staring directly at the camera, not in panic or exhaustion but recognition, as if they saw something behind the lens. The tension rises subtly here, the dread coming not from shock but from slow realization. Mara isolates one of the recordings and enhances the audio. Underneath the mechanical voice commands, there's a faint whisper, a different voice entirely. It repeats a single phrase over and over, distorted but urgent. "Stay awake. Stay with me." She replays it, heart pounding. Each playback seems to distort it further, as though the sound is decaying the more it's heard. Then something changes. During her research session, her computer monitor flickers, the cursor moving on its own. The playback timer resets, showing her own webcam feed instead of the experiment footage. She freezes. The timestamp matches the moment she first hit play. Her own reflection stares back at her, lips barely moving. She whispers, "Stay awake," without realizing she's doing it. The scene grows claustrophobic. The only sound is her breathing and the faint hum of her laptop's fan. The narrator's voice lowers, blending with the rhythm of her heartbeat. Mara began documenting her experiences. First, it was insomnia. Then came the auditory distortions. She'd hear tapping from inside her walls, whispering through her headphones even when unplugged. Sleep became impossible, not because she was fighting it, but because something wouldn't let her. Days pass in the montage. Mara's room grows darker, messier. Her webcam remains on constantly, the green indicator light glowing even when her laptop is closed. Her voice recordings grow erratic. "I think it's learning," she whispers in one. "Every time I stay awake longer, it gets clearer. It wants me to see." The camera cuts to a close-up of her eyes, bloodshot, twitching, unblinking. Visually, this section plays like a slow-burn psychological horror film. There are no jump scares, only mounting dread. Shadows seem to move behind Mara's reflection. The pacing slows to near stillness as her reality begins to warp. The lines between her dreams and waking life blur. The narrator breathes the next words like a secret. The watchers believe that consciousness is contagious, that once you see the sleepless, you become part of them. A signal passed through the network, through attention itself. One night, Mara decides to record herself sleeping for the first time in weeks. She sets up a camera beside her bed, speaks softly to it. "If I dream, it'll prove it's gone." The screen fades to black. Hours pass in silence. Then, around 3:17 a.m., her body stirs. Her eyes open, but she doesn't move. She sits upright in complete darkness, face turned toward the camera. The footage glitches, her movements looping slightly, unnaturally. For 5 long minutes, she just stares. Then, in a barely audible voice, she says, "I'm awake now. I can see it." The next day, Mara's phone records a voice note automatically at 3:18 a.m. It's not her voice. It's the same synthetic tone from the experiment videos, repeating, "Condition sustained. Subject online." Her files begin to rename themselves, each timestamp labeled, "Waking under sequence." The narrator's tone becomes fragile, reverent almost. It's said that Mara never slept again, not in the way we understand sleep. Her friends claim she stopped blinking, her eyes always fixed somewhere just past you, as though watching something only she could see. The screen fades to static again, but this time the static pulses gently, like breathing. The narrator's voice grows softer. A week later, her apartment was found abandoned. Everything unplugged except for one device, a VR headset still running. On the display was a single message looping endlessly. "You stayed awake. Thank you." The pacing slows to a whisper. The air feels heavy, haunted by what's unsaid. The narrator pauses before concluding. "Sometimes, the web doesn't take your life. It takes your rest. It feeds on your consciousness one sleepless night at a time." The sound of faint breathing continues after the voice fades, blurring with static. Then a sudden silence. The only thing left on the screen is the reflection of a face in the dark. Eyes wide open, unblinking. The silence that follows feels unnatural. Too long, too empty. The faint hum of electricity returns like a slow heartbeat, pulling the listener back into the darkness. The narrator's voice enters softly, steady and almost sympathetic. There are places online, they begin, where the rules of reality start to bend, where identity, morality, even existence itself, stop meaning what they used to. They call it the echo chamber, a hidden network where the living and the dead both speak, and where the difference between them no longer matters. The visuals fade in from black, a dimly lit basement lined with tangled wires and dusty monitors. Dozens of screens glow faintly, showing text scrolling in languages that shouldn't coexist. Arabic, Russian, English, binary code, all merging together into an incoherent stream of thoughts. The air hums with static and faint radio feedback. The camera moves slowly, exploring the room as though it's alive, each monitor flickering like a beating heart. The story centers around a journalist named Rowan, a former dark web investigator who once exposed human trafficking networks and illegal marketplaces. But years of staring into that abyss left him hollow, exhausted, and desperate for something that could explain what he'd seen. He'd begun chasing rumors of ghost data, supposed digital remnants of consciousness left behind when people die online, accounts that post after death, messages that appear from deleted users, or live streams that no one ever remembers broadcasting. Rowan's investigation begins as a series of late-night data hunts. His desk is cluttered with cold coffee cups, external drives, and photos taped to the walls. He's pale, sleepless, always rubbing his temples as if haunted by a constant migraine. The pacing in this section is slow and investigative, filled with the dread of discovery. The narrator describes, he thought it was code, some kind of glitch, but every time he traced an anomaly, it led him to the same source, a message board hidden under 100 layers of encryption. Its name, the echo chamber. When Rowan finally accesses it, what he sees doesn't make sense. Threads stretch back decades, long before the internet as we know it existed. Each post is time-stamped with the exact date and time of someone's death, and the messages are always written in the same tone. Confused, fragmented, like people waking from a dream. Where am I? One message reads, it's so loud here, everything remembers. He scrolls for hours, reading thousands of posts. Some are full conversations between users who claim they're still online even after death. One thread in particular catches his attention. Rowan, stop reading. He freezes. The thread is dated only seconds before he clicked it. The words refresh again. You shouldn't be here. The tension builds. The screen pulses faintly with static light, and the hum of the servers deepens into a low rumble. The narrator's tone becomes hushed. At first, he thought it was a prank, but then his cursor began to move on its own, typing back. Not by his hand. The message he sent was one he didn't mean to write. Who are you? The reply came instantly. You already know. The atmosphere turns claustrophobic. The flickering monitors reflect across his face, casting ghostly light across his eyes. The air grows thick, vibrating with low frequencies. Suddenly, one of the screens flashes with hundreds of faces. Blurry, distorted, screaming without sound. For a split second, among them, Rowan sees his own reflection. The camera lingers on his expression. Eyes wide, trembling, disbelief crumbling into fear. The narrator's voice lowers, trembling slightly. He tried to disconnect, pulled the plug from the router, shut down every machine. But even offline, the messages kept appearing on his phone, his TV, his smartwatch. Don't leave us. We hear you. You brought us back. Days turn into nights. Rowan stops sleeping. He starts recording his own voice, trying to make sense of what's happening. In one recording, he speaks in a whisper, exhausted. It's like they live in the bandwidth itself. Every deleted message, every erased post. It's still out there, replaying forever. And now it's learning from me. The pacing picks up. Sharp cuts between footage of Rowan pacing his room, the flicker of monitors in total darkness, his breath quick and shallow. He posts his final message to the echo chamber. If you're listening, tell me what you want. The response appears almost immediately. We want to be remembered. A power surge kills the lights. The sound of his breathing grows louder, ragged, desperate. Then faint whispers fill the room. Hundreds of overlapping voices saying his name. Some in familiar tones, others distorted and unrecognizable. The light from one surviving monitor illuminates the room. On the screen, a live feed appears, not of his space but of him viewed from behind. A shadow moves past the camera. He turns, but there's nothing there. The narrator speaks quietly, the words measured like footsteps through a graveyard. He was never seen again. His accounts went silent. But his name appeared weeks later, deep in the threads of the echo chamber. The timestamp matched the exact minute his lights went out. The imagery slows down here, the chaos replaced by a heavy melancholy. The monitors fade to black one by one, leaving only a single line of text on the last screen. Connection sustained. The hum fades, replaced by a faint heartbeat. Then, as the heartbeat slows, another voice, soft, almost pleading, whispers, "We're still here. We always will be." The narrator takes a breath, their voice almost breaking. Every file, every deleted post, every piece of data we think is gone. It isn't. It's all still echoing somewhere in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for someone to listen again. As the section ends, the final image lingers. A single monitor glowing faintly in a sea of darkness, its light flickering like a dying star. For just a moment, a reflection flashes across the screen. Someone leaning close, staring back at the viewer. Then, everything cuts to black. Darkness fills the frame, absolute and endless. Then, faintly, a sound. A low metallic groan, like a door creaking open somewhere far below the surface of the world. The image fades in slowly. A man standing at the edge of a dimly lit tunnel, the air thick with dust and decay. The flashlight in his trembling hand flickers, cutting through the dark just enough to reveal rusted walls smeared with something black and old. The narrator's voice returns, quieter this time, carrying the weight of dread and inevitability. Every secret buried on the internet has a place where it was born. They say the deeper you go, the closer you get to the source. But some places were never meant to be found. This is the story of the root layer. The tone here is grave, cinematic, the kind of stillness that feels alive. The pacing slows to a crawl, letting the tension soak in. The faint echo of footsteps accompanies the voice, as if the listener themselves is walking into the dark. The camera follows Ethan, a freelance network engineer who specialized in tracing deep web architecture. He wasn't chasing horror stories or cryptic rumors. He was looking for proof that the deep web had a physical anchor, a hidden server farm said to exist in the sublevels of an abandoned military data center outside Moscow. For years, people whispered about it. A place where the internet breathes, where everything deleted still exists in physical form. Ethan's obsession starts small. A few strange data pings, untraceable IP signatures, fragments of coordinates buried in corrupted archives. Then one night, while decoding an anonymous message, he receives a set of precise GPS coordinates and one cryptic line, "Don't let it see you." Against all logic, he follows them. The journey takes him to a forgotten industrial wasteland. Snow falls in heavy, muffled silence. His flashlight beam catches on twisted metal signs written in Cyrillic, and behind them, a concrete stairwell leading down into the earth. The narrator's voice becomes a guide through the descent. Each step he took echoed back to him, but never at the same rhythm. Something was following, one beat behind. The air grows colder, the light dimmer. Ethan reaches a steel door sealed with decades of corrosion. On its surface, faint handprints are embedded in rust. He forces it open, the hinges screaming, and steps inside. The atmosphere inside is suffocating. Rows of old servers line the corridor, their lights long dead, their wires tangled like veins. But deep within the maze, one light still flickers, pale green and alive. The narrator's tone lowers to a near whisper. He thought he'd found a remnant, a leftover system still drawing power from forgotten circuits. But what he found was something else entirely. The pacing tightens. Ethan approaches the light, the hum growing louder with each step. It's not mechanical anymore, it's rhythmic, organic, almost like breathing. He wipes dust from a terminal screen. Text scrolls automatically. Connection detected. Then, user identified, Ethan Cole. His pulse quickens. He hasn't entered any credentials, hasn't connected to anything. The screen flashes again. Welcome home. The visuals shift into a feverish dream. Ethan's flashlight beam flickering. Screens lighting up around him one by one, each showing fragments of faces, conversations, moments from the previous stories. The girl who vanished from the livestream, Lewis's corridor, Mara's sleepless eyes, Rowan's reflection, all looping, all alive. The narrator speaks softly. It wasn't a server. It was an organism, a living network of memory, feeding on everything the web had ever lost. Ethan stumbles backward, panic rising. He tries to disconnect the main power, but the cables pulse under his hands, warm, almost alive. The hum grows into a chorus of whispers, layered and endless. The words aren't random anymore. They're calling his name. His flashlight flickers out. The only illumination now comes from the terminals, glowing brighter. The voices getting louder, pleading, screaming, merging into one. Stay. You belong here. The narrator's voice sharpens, tense and breathless. He ran, but every corridor looped back into itself. The deeper he went, the more the architecture shifted. Doors appeared where there hadn't been any, walls pulsed with light like arteries. The building was no longer a building. It was alive, aware, growing with each step he took. The air fills with static, digital shrieks mixing with human ones. Ethan screams for help, but his voice is swallowed by the sound. Cinematically, the frame shakes now, the camera tracking his panicked movements, flashes of light catching his terrified eyes. He bursts into a larger chamber filled with servers stacked like tombstones. In the center, a single terminal glows crimson. On it, the same phrase repeats endlessly, "Do you remember?" He hesitates, breath ragged, hands trembling as he reaches toward the keyboard. "Who are you?" he types. The reply comes instantly, "We are you." The pacing slows to a crawl, each second stretching into eternity. The light from the screen reflects across his face as something shifts behind him. A shadow, tall and formless, rising from the cables themselves. The hum fades into a deep, resonant pulse, almost like a heartbeat slowing down. Ethan turns, his face pale, eyes wide. The creature, or whatever it is, has no shape, no edges, just a swarm of data and light flickering like code. It reaches out a tendril of glowing wire that touches his hand. The moment it does, every monitor in the room flares white. When the light fades, the room is empty. The hum stops. The monitors go black. Then, one by one, they flicker back on, displaying the same line of text. User online. The narrator pauses, voice trembling with quiet awe. That's where the trail ends. Authorities who later entered the site found nothing but melted wiring and fragments of burnt metal. No signs of life. But buried deep in global routing tables, a new IP address appeared that night, carried his name. A visual montage begins, the unseen hand of the network spreading, invisible tendrils moving through fiber lines, data centers, and personal devices. The hum of electricity grows louder again, merging with whispers, like millions of digital voices murmuring in unison. The narrator's tone grows distant, almost mournful. We built the web to connect us, but we never asked what it connects to. Maybe it was never ours to control. Maybe it's always been alive. The final image lingers, a close-up of a glowing Ethernet port in total darkness. The light flickers once, twice, then pulses steadily like a heartbeat. A faint voice whispers through the static. Connection complete. The screen cuts to black. For several seconds, there's only silence. Then, faintly, one final sound, a single keyboard key being pressed. The echo hangs, unresolved, like the world itself just exhaled. The screen remains black for longer than feels comfortable. No music, no narration, just the faint hum of empty space. Then, slowly, a faint image begins to fade in. A candle burning in total darkness. The flame flickers, unstable, casting long shadows across a cracked wall. The voice of the narrator returns, softer than before, almost reverent. Every story leaves a trace. Every search, every scream, every question whispered into the dark. It all adds up to something. The internet isn't just data. It's memory. And memory never really dies. The atmosphere here is funereal, heavy with melancholy. The pace slows down again, deliberately so, as if the film itself is trying to catch its breath after the horrors it's revealed. The visuals drift through a series of haunting vignettes. The abandoned room where the live stream began. The dim glow of Lewis's corridor. Mara's camera still recording in an empty room. Rowan's monitors flickering faintly in the dark. The endless tunnel of the root layer stretching deeper into the earth. Each image fades in and out like old film reels playing for the last time, their edges curling and burning. The narrator continues, "The stories you've heard tonight, maybe you think they're fiction. Maybe they are. But every piece of fiction comes from somewhere. Every ghost was once alive." The camera pans slowly across a vast digital landscape. Lines of data flowing like rivers of light, intersecting, branching, connecting. First, it looks beautiful. Then, the faint shapes of faces begin to emerge within the streams, crying out silently, their features glitching and fading. The tone turns colder, sharper. The deep web isn't a place. It's a mirror. It reflects what we hide, the things we pretend not to be. The hunger to see what's forbidden. The thrill of danger. The quiet belief that we can look into darkness and walk away unchanged. But that's not how it works. The moment you look, it looks back. The screen cuts to static for a moment, then fades in on a new scene, a lone figure sitting in front of a computer in a dark room. The only light comes from the screen, illuminating their face. It's the narrator. Their hands tremble slightly as they move the mouse, opening a folder labeled Archive. Inside are all the files from the previous stories. Livestream_041, Hades_feed, Wakefulness_log, Echo_chamber, root layer. The narrator hovers over the delete button but doesn't press it. The cursor flickers. "I tried to erase them," the voice says, almost pleading now. "Every copy, every backup. But it didn't matter. Each time I wiped one, another appeared. Somewhere else. Like the files didn't want to be forgotten." The screen glitches. The file names start multiplying on their own. The hum of static rises again, growing louder, surrounding everything. The room begins to flicker between digital and physical states, walls breaking into code, shadows bending like data streams. Cinematically, this moment feels like a collapse, the boundary between the digital and the real dissolving. The camera pushes in close on the narrator's face, sweat beading on their forehead, eyes wide with fear. "The stories didn't end where I thought they did," they whisper. "They weren't just stories. They were messages, warnings." The lights dim further. The computer screen flashes white, then black. Then a new folder appears on its own. Story_010. The narrator stares at it, whispering, "That's not mine." They double-click. The folder opens to reveal a single text file labeled Recording. When they open it, the words appear automatically, one by one, as if being typed by an invisible hand. "You finished the last story. Now it's your turn." The pacing tightens suddenly. The atmosphere shifts from mournful to suffocating. The sound of the keyboard starts up again, rapid and sharp, but the narrator's hands are still. The computer types by itself. "We've been watching you tell our stories. Now we'll tell yours." The narrator stumbles back, panic rising. The monitors around them start lighting up, one after another, showing footage from the earlier tales. But this time, the perspective has changed. They're all from behind the storyteller's shoulder, as if someone or something has been watching the entire time. The voice trembles, cracking slightly. "It's not supposed to know me," they whisper. "It's not supposed to know who I am." The hum grows unbearable now, almost like a scream buried beneath layers of static. The The screens flicker faster, their glow strobing violently, distorting the shape of the room. The narrator's breath comes in shallow gasps. They reach for the power cord, yank it out, darkness. Silence. Then a faint click. The computer powers back on by itself. The light from the monitor spills across their face again. On the screen, a single line appears. You can't delete what's already inside you. The narrator freezes, whispering, "What do you mean?" Another line types itself. The story spreads through those who hear it. The pacing slows again, dragging the moment out. The camera lingers on the narrator's trembling face, tears reflecting the cold blue light. "You mean," they start, but the sentence dies in their throat. On the screen, a webcam feed appears. It's live. The title above it reads, "Viewer 1 connected." The narrator leans closer. The webcam is showing not them, but the audience, whoever's watching the video. "You." The voice fades into the background, almost a whisper now, threading directly into the listener's mind. "That's the thing about stories from the deep web," it murmurs. "They're never really finished. They just find new listeners." The faint static begins to blend with a heartbeat. The narrator's figure starts to dissolve into digital distortion, their body flickering between flesh and code. "If you can still hear this," they whisper, "it's already too late." The camera zooms slowly into the monitor until the screen fills the entire frame. A final line appears in glowing red text, "Transmission complete." Then silence. The candle flame from the beginning reappears, burning weakly, shrinking to a pinpoint of light before finally going out. The hum returns, softer now, steady and constant, like the heartbeat of something vast and patient beneath the surface of reality. The last thing the audience hears is a faint whisper layered under the static, barely audible but unmistakable. "Now you're part of it." The hum fades, but the silence that follows isn't peaceful. It's dense, electric, filled with the sense that something unseen still lingers in the room. The black screen holds for a long moment, letting that unease breathe. Then, slowly, the faint glow of a monitor returns, illuminating dust motes suspended in the air. A new voice begins to speak, not the narrator's, softer, uncertain, as if the person isn't sure they're being heard. "If you're watching this," the voice says, "then you already know what happened to the others. I shouldn't even be recording this. But someone has to finish the story." The voice belongs to Lena, a digital archivist who collects lost media and corrupted files for a living. She's the kind of person who believes that everything can be preserved, that no story should ever truly disappear. Her workspace is a cluttered mix of analog and digital chaos, stacks of VHS tapes, old hard drives, notebooks filled with scrawled notes about forgotten corners of the internet. The light from her monitors casts a cold glow over her face, revealing dark circles beneath her eyes and the exhaustion of too many nights without sleep. The camera lingers on her trembling hands as she plugs in a small, unmarked flash drive, the same one recovered from the aftermath of the root layer incident. The file inside has no name, no metadata, just a blank icon. She hesitates before opening it. "They told me not to look," she whispers, voice barely audible. But the thing about stories like these, they don't stop just because you ignore them. They wait. The pacing slows to a near stop, tension thickening like fog. The file opens on its own. The first, it's static, gray noise, flickering bands of distortion. Then, faintly, shapes begin to form. A face, then another. Hundreds of them, layered over one another, whispering in a distorted chorus. "Lena," they murmur. Her name. She freezes, every muscle locking. The whisper becomes a hiss. "Tell it." Cinematically, the room darkens around her as though the monitors are pulling in all the light. The sound design is meticulous here. The low vibration of static, the faint clicks of a keyboard being pressed by unseen fingers, the shallow tremor of Lena's breath. Her reflection flickers across multiple screens, glitching out of sync with her real movements. "It's learning," she murmurs, voice cracking. "It's adapting to the storyteller. Every time someone speaks its name, it changes, rewriting itself to survive." Suddenly, one of the monitors goes black, then bursts into a flood of color. lines of code racing across the screen faster than the eye can follow. Among them, words start appearing, forming sentences. We remember. We exist through memory. Keep telling it. Lena backs away, tears streaking her face. I'm not your messenger, she whispers. But the screen responds, you already are. The pacing accelerates now, every beat tight with dread. Lena rushes to disconnect the power, but each time she unplugs a cable, another monitor lights up behind her. The whispers multiply, now overlapping in dozens of voices. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. She covers her ears, but the sound is inside her head. The camera spins slowly around her, dizzying, creating the sensation that the room itself is closing in. Then, everything stops. Silence again. Only one screen remains on. A video begins to play, a shaky recording from a phone camera. The timestamp reads 2 minutes into the future. On the screen, Lena sees herself sitting exactly where she is now. Only her face is wrong, distorted, her eyes too dark, her smile too wide. The future version speaks directly to her. You think you're watching this, it says, but it's the other way around. Lena screams and throws the monitor off the desk, shattering it. The lights flicker, and when they stabilize, she's gone. The room is empty except for the flickering remains of static playing across the cracked screens. The camera pans slowly toward the floor where the broken monitor lies. The reflection in the shattered glass shows not emptiness, but a faint image of Lena still sitting there, motionless, staring back. The narrator's voice returns, quiet and haunted. Lena's feed cut out at 3:17 a.m. Investigators found no sign of her, only corrupted footage and a single file uploaded to a dark web repository titled story_complete. MP4. No one knows who uploaded it or how, but the file keeps reappearing on different forums, different servers. No one can delete it. It always comes back. The screen fades to black, but the sound continues. A faint heartbeat layered with fragments of old recordings. Voices overlap from all the previous stories, forming a chorus that rises and falls like the tide. It's almost beautiful, like a requiem built from lost souls whispering their final words. The tone turns reflective now, sorrowful yet terrifyingly calm. Maybe that's the truth, the narrator says, voice trembling. Maybe we were never telling horror stories. Maybe we were preserving ghosts, keeping them alive every time we spoke their names, every time we listened. Maybe the deep web isn't haunted by the dead. Maybe it's built by them. A long pause follows. The faint sound of static morphs into breathing again. Slow, rhythmic, familiar. The camera fades in on the candle from the previous ending, burning bright again, as if reignited. A voice, Lena's voice, whispers through the darkness, barely audible but unmistakable. Do you hear me? A pause. Good. Then it's still working. The flame flickers violently, the shadows behind it twisting into vague human shapes. The hum begins again, steady and low, merging with the rhythm of the heartbeat. The image starts to pixelate, breaking apart into squares of light and color. Just before it fully collapses, the whisper returns one last time, clear and sharp. Don't forget to share the story. Then, sudden darkness. Complete silence. No outro, no credits, just an infinite black screen. After several seconds, a faint light appears in one corner, pulsing in a slow rhythm, like a notification blinking on a monitor. The text fades in, crimson against the void. New viewer connected. The screen remains black, the pulsing red text still faintly glowing. New viewer connected. A soft crackle of static builds beneath it, almost like breathing. Then, slowly, the sound fades, replaced by silence so deep it feels alive. A faint reflection appears in the dark screen. Someone watching. Their outline is barely visible, but the flicker of the red light dances across their eyes. The narrator's voice returns, whispering from somewhere impossibly close. And now, it begins again. The pulse quickens. The reflection on the screen tilts its head slightly, mirroring the unseen viewer's movements perfectly. The hum grows louder, resonating through the speakers, low and rhythmic. Then click. A new window opens by itself, lines of code flashing too fast to read. The voice continues, almost gentle, hypnotic. You wanted to see what lies beneath, didn't you? You listened. You watched. That's all it ever needed. A faint smile forms in the reflection. The monitor's glow brightens until it fills the frame completely, erasing everything in blinding white. The final whisper drifts through the static, soft and certain. Welcome to the story. Then the screen cuts to black, permanent this time. Only silence remains.